Hello students, today we shall be taking up A Tiger in the Zoo by Leslie Norris. This poem has been taken from Class 10 NCERT book, First Flight. George Leslie Norris was a prize-winning Welsh poet and he was also a short story writer. He died at the age of 85 in 2006. He was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. In fact, he also taught in schools from 1952 to 58. Let's start with the recitation of the poem. The poem starts like this. He stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage on pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the waterhole where plump deer pass. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. But he's locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Now you all must have observed what is the rhyme scheme of this poem. The rhyme scheme is A, B, C, B. So what is this poem about? The poem contrasts a tiger in the zoo with the tiger in its natural habitat. Now let's start with the explanation. First we'll be taking up stanzas 1 and 2. He stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage on pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. Now stalks basically means strides somewhere in a proud or angry or in a stiff manner. So the poet describes the limited movement of this magnificent tiger who is trapped in a cage. He describes his paws that are as soft as velvet. Now why are his paws soft? Because he has spent his whole life in a cage and not in his natural habitat, that is the forest. His movement is also quiet when his feet with velvet-like pads pace around. He moves in his quiet rage. Okay, quiet rage is an oxymoron here. He is silent, but he is angry. Anger, obviously, children, is natural because he has been separated from his natural habitat. Not only his movement is restricted, but also his emotions and basic nature has been suppressed. So what is the basic nature of the tiger? Tigers are supposed to roar. They are supposed to express their anger, their frustrations. But here in the zoo, this poor creature has been subdued, restricted, all right? And therefore, his movement has been also restricted. Now, when in the second stanza, let us see what does the poet has to say. He should be lurking. He refers to the tiger. He should be lurking in shadow, which means, remaining hidden in the shadows of dense trees. Shadow of what? Shadows of dense trees, dense thick forests. Sliding through long grass near the waterhole where plump deer pass. So here the poet starts by discussing as to what should be the real scenario. First he describes what is happening in the cage and then he says what should be happening. So the real scenario according to the poet should be that the tiger should be lurking in shadow. He, being a wild animal, should have been in his natural habitat. Had he been there, he would have been moving around in the shadows of the thick, dense trees. And now we must try and visualize the scene here, where the poet portrays the tiger who is moving in the shadows of thick, dense trees. He's hiding behind long grass or maybe bushes. And what is he doing? near the water hole. He is waiting for a plump deer to pass so that he can hunt him. So plump deer is the tiger's prey. So the poet makes it very clear to us that the natural thing for the ferocious, magnificent tiger is not to be in the cage, but to be left in his natural habitat, where he will hunt, kill, and enjoy his kill. He should not be dependent on zoo authorities to provide him food. Stanzas 3 and 4. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. So in this stanza again, the poet continues to describe what more the tiger should be doing. He should be snarling, meaning growling aggressively with his bared teeth. He should be sitting at the jungle's edge in close vicinity of the village. His presence should terrorize the villagers. He should be terrorizing people passing that way. And how will he do that? He will be showing his sharp teeth, baring its claws, and producing sound of danger. This is the true nature of a tiger. The basic instinct, the basic nature of a tiger cannot be changed. He is supposed to threaten others. His snarl should terrorize others. But, stanza 4, he is locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. Now this but narrates the plight of this tiger who is separated from its natural habitat. The poet further says, but he is locked in a concrete cell and all his strength has been put behind these bars. Now here the reader can sense that the poet sympathizes with this caged tiger. In continuity with the previous stanza, wherein the poet talks of his strength and terror, here the poet says, since he is locked, he cannot exhibit his strength. He is left with only one option. And what is that? To stalk the length of his cage. His strength is locked behind the bars. He walks or he stalks in an angry and proud manner. He ignores the visitors. He exhibits no interest in their presence. He basically hates and resents being an object of public display and entertainment. Therefore, he shows his indifference by ignoring the visitors. The final stanza, stanza 5. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. So the tiger hears the last voice at night, and this last voice refers to the sound of the cars that go about patrolling the zoo to make sure that everything is in order. So the noise of these patrolling cars represents the civilized world, which stands in sharp contrast to the medley of sound in a forest. So now the poet says that the tiger stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Basically, he is a helpless animal. He is portrayed as a helpless animal who has no option but to look at the stars. When do you gaze at stars? Yes. So the poor tiger has nothing to do. He feels helpless and therefore he gazes, he looks at the stars. The poet calls the sound of the patrolling cars voice. He does not refer to as sound but voice. Now this is ironical. The tiger cannot hear the voices of other animals of the forest, so the poet says that he hears the voice of the patrolling cars in an ironical manner. Now also please pay attention to brilliant eyes and brilliant stars. Now the stars are referred to as brilliant because they are, shining in the sky. They shine, so they are called brilliant. And brilliant eyes, the tiger's eyes are also brilliant, are also shining because of the stars, because he's looking at the stars. Now there is one more interpretation here. The brilliant eyes of the tiger may also refer to his strong longing for a free life in his open natural habitat. Okay, so with that we come to an end of the explanation of the poem. Let us have a look at the poetic devices and finally conclude the poem. These are the poetic devices that have been used in the poem. Personification. Yes, the tiger has been personified. Oxymoron, quiet rage. Metaphor, when tiger's paws are compared to that of velvet. Imagery, yes, he stalks in his vivid stripes. Repetition is there, line 3, line 4, and then we have alliteration. Let's conclude the poem. The poet has portrayed the plight of a caged tiger. Now the poem highlights as to how the tiger feels. Obviously, he feels stifled and he is forced to suppress his natural behavior. And very beautifully, the poet has presented two settings, two contrasting settings. And in both the settings, first is a cage and the next is a forest. The movements, actions, and the behavior of the tiger are presented. A free tiger in his natural habitat, how is he? He is ferocious, he will roar, he would wander around freely without any restrictions, whereas in a cage he cannot roar and he has learned, he has been, or should we say that he has been forcefully trained to suppress his natural instincts. So with the help of these two settings, the poet has tried to convey a very important message here, that wild animals should not be caged. They should be allowed to thrive and survive freely in their natural habitats. I hope you enjoyed the poem and understood it well. Thank you for watching.